Welcome to another episode of the Quaggling Sand Podcast. Today is the 29th of June, 2021. I continue to record this on Tuesdays for some reason. I don't know why. I'd like to do it Monday night or Monday sometime. But anyway, hope you're having a good week. End of June already. 2021 is halfway over. Already. I guess when you're allowed to go outside, time passes more quickly. At least until the Delta variant comes to see you. So fingers crossed. But for those of us who work from home, it's not a big deal. Not a big Delta. See what I did there? And I am still working on stuff. Last week one of the newsletters, I listed off a bunch of projects or sub-projects that are the basis for other projects, and continuing the starter idea somehow led me to find, which I had never seen before, web stories, which is a Google thing. It used to be called the AMP stories, based on their accelerated mobile pages, HTML buster, I guess. The idea of AMP is nice, but the implementation, AMP reminds me of Instagram. Like, you can only have one link, and you can only do this, and you can only put that there, and then you can't have any other links or other cross-linking, and you can't share things, and all this stuff that as Jamie Zwinski, JWZ, wrote. I think I linked to this elsewhere, that Instagram kind of tried to break the internet, and Google is in a better position to do that. And so yeah, AMP. So I was thinking, now of course this is another distraction, but I've thought that stories on their own are kind of interesting. The animation, okay, that's fun stuff. Maybe you want to have a dog face or some mustache tracking your face or whatever the bonus stuff is. But the notion of a what is essentially a short presentation. Which I have to think that somewhere, I guess Snapchat had come up with these. I have to think somewhere somebody was watching a slide deck, a presentation, and they were going, "Hey, what if we turn this into a product for kids, for teenagers?" And it'll just disappear, as all presentations should eventually. So, interesting idea. So it got me thinking, because AMP is the web story thing is kind of interesting. I mean, it's not horrible. It's still AMP, so you have to use AMP resources, and you have to apparently, in order for Google to make use of your AMP story, your web story, you have to follow their rules. And their rules are things like the story has to be self-contained. You have to, you can't link. You can't say, okay, well, why don't you click through to here and continue. You can't use it as like a preamble, introduction. You can have ads, but you can't apparently advertise for your own content. That seems very odd to me. But that is Google. Until they cancel it, then who cares? So, and in fact, AMP is no longer required. I just saw this on the register. AMP is no longer required to get on Google search results in a good position. So maybe they're realizing that AMP is not all that. I don't know. Anyway, so I sort of was looking at. I've thought stories would be interesting for a couple of the things that I'm working on. Although everybody does stories, so I wouldn't call them stories. But the presentation is interesting, and the fact that they are temporary. One of the projects that that I think working is a strong word, but one of the projects that that really sucked up a lot of my time back in 2012 was my foray into mobile vending and my realization that the tools that were available were awful, and they still are, actually. So I had been working on a thing that I called Regular DB. Regular DB, what a horrible name. It was based on or inspired by IMDb, the Internet Movie Database, which is actually a cool website. I will tell you why that continued to be an inspiration in a moment. So Regular DB was, I used to hang out at Fibber McGee's in downtown Sunnyvale. And one of the bartenders, Mary, was off on maternity leave. A young Jovian, small man Jovian, entering the world. And so Jillian was covering her Wednesday night. And none of the Wednesday night crowd knew Jillian. So they were coming through there. Oh, Mary's not working. And then some would stay, some would go. And so Jillian said one night when I was there, I need more regulars. See where this is going? I need more regulars. Nobody knows me, all that. And as it happens, shortly after she said that, I think it was one guy and two girls, or it was at least one guy because he spoke. And he said they were leaving out the front door. And he said, hey, what's your name again? Jillian, I work here Wednesday. And he turned as she said her name, and he was not completely sober. And so she was trying, I work on Wednesdays, and so she kind of gave a little rundown of her schedule. And I thought, there seems like a better way to do this, because smartphones were catching on. All the bartenders I knew either had a iPhone or a BlackBerry. I had a BlackBerry at the time. So I said, interesting. So I started concocting Regular DB. Now, I think I've mentioned this before. My first mobile application that I developed was called Nookie Map. And it will make a return, by the way. That's for another episode. So Nookie Map was literally meeting. It was, I want to meet someone, and then some very basic, which today would be modified a little bit, but no asking and answering 25 or 50 questions, no check boxes. No, I mean, very simple, very simple. The whole idea was to determine where people who are also interested in meeting people are or would be, and then going there. That's it, on the map. So I kind of had that notion, and I had already been fiddling around with Google Maps and all that. So yeah, Regular DB. Like Internet Movie Database. Like I could find where I'm a regular, so I couldn't figure out. I mean, Service Industry DB, that would send a different message. But and I think today, in fact, there is a platform of some time. I think it's called Industry. I met one of the co-founders here in Vegas during Collision, I think, many years ago. And it kind of does something similar. It's basically a website for bartenders, I think. I'll have to check that. I'll try to put a show notes link in there. So yeah, the notion was, what if there was a way to connect regulars of, okay, we'll start with bars, but it could be regulars at hair salons. It could be, hair and nails. Could be coffee shops. Could be anything. Anyone who has a regular clientele, or anyone who is a regular client of someone in a service industry. I figured service industry people, especially if they have different shifts on different days and they move around, like, how do you find them? And this was before Facebook had pages. So my pitch was, do you want all of your regulars to follow you on Facebook? And that got an instant no, or to be your Facebook friends, I should say. So yeah, regular DB was, it was an interesting idea, and I got almost universal lean in from all bartenders, because this was like another way to talk to their customers and bar owners and business owners. This is when hyper local was becoming a thing. And so if you said hyper local, you got a little lean in, a way to talk to your customers, a way to identify customers who were down the street. And why would they be down the street? Because they're visiting their favorite bartender or getting their hair done, whatever. So this was, it was generally interesting to everyone I spoke to. Now, granted, I was in Silicon Valley, so I have a tech solution for something. Tell me more. So may or may not have reflected reality, but universal interest initially. And then, and I did a little phone survey, or I did a bar survey of phone calls. 75 to 80% of the reason people call a small bar, at least their neighborhood bar, and this doesn't apply only to bars, but I checked bars. That was the initial focus for the rollout. And the reason people call, and sometimes it was just this terse, who's working? So the ability to publish a schedule, other promotion, and to find your favorite bartender or whomever seemed like a win-win. So the other thing that I was kind of inspired by that night at Fibbers was, how do you pass this information along to the patron who's had maybe a bit more than the others, and not make it fun. That's fine. That's why you're there. So on my BlackBerry, that would the BlackBerry Curve, I think I had at the time. Yeah, I think that's right. With the little trackball, but a reasonably sized screen. So that was my sort of baseline. The idea was to present from the bartender, right? The bartender could grab their phone and present their profile picture of some kind and a QR code and of a minimal, like, name of the place and the date. So that the person could just take a picture of that, and then tomorrow. And I think this was before QR codes were quite so universally readable by phones and whatnot. So like today you can just point your phone camera at a poster, or in this case it would have been somebody else's phone, and you would have been able to actually tap on the QR code, or the URL would have been embedded in the viewfinder. So decoding of QR codes is sort of a commonplace now. Not so much the case there, but again, including the name of the place, bartender's name, and again, aimed at bartenders, but it could be anybody. But bartenders and bar service industry folks would tend to be making these connections with regulars, and then the regular may or may not have the wherewithal to remember times, dates, names. So that was the idea. So it's basically a little telephone business card. Telephone. Nobody calls it a telephone anymore. That's funny. So yeah, everybody thought this was a fascinating idea, and it was. And the business model was sound. How do you get... I actually did another little survey where I asked customers if they knew their favorite bartender was working at some faraway bar. And I'll never forget one of these guys at... it was at the time it was called Scruffy's in Sunnyvale. Scruffy Murphy's. A lot of Irish. The city of Sunnyvale was founded by the Murphy family. So there you go. The Murphy, Townsend, something. There were a couple of families that crossed over the Donner Pass, but they made it. And they arrived in Sunnyvale and then went up to San Francisco and all that. So good times. Anyway, would he go to a faraway bar? I didn't define far away. And he said, there's a bartender I know who works in at Margaritaville in not Santa Cruz. Anyway, so that far away. Sunnyvale, Santa Cruz, cross over the mountains to the ocean. A good drive. And he said, yeah, I would go if I knew she was working. So that was my anecdotal evidence, if you will. But that was the general response, right? Like, if I knew somebody was working, sure, I would go. So use RegioDB to attract customers to their usual spots and then advertise to them for nearby businesses so that they would say, oh, I'm here. And look, there's a restaurant that's open, or, so it's a way to engage people while they're out. So and in fact, the bar or the restaurant or the coffee shop or the hair salon or wherever the person is working, they become the destination, not so much the location. So hyperlocal is not only nearby businesses, but it is the business itself. So if I'm going to select between, say, Fibbers and Scruffy's, the names I've just said, both on the same street, but I know my favorite bartender's working at Scruffy's tonight, maybe I'll go there. So the business model was totally simple. It was Scruffy's and Fibbers in this example would pay me marketing, advertising, whatever, and the bartenders would be free. So, and the other part of my pitch was, do I want to charge a single mom bartender to get more business? No, the whole business model is about bringing business to the employees, and then their employers benefit. So anyway, so that was generally interesting until I crossed over into, at some point, a realization on, like, it seemed like a lot of people at the same time. Maybe it was when tech was becoming a little bit too much. Like, everybody was talking about tech. Because I was right in this spot, right in the middle of all this. And I started getting, I have a lot of regulars. And they do find me eventually. So I think there was this sort of like, I have to do more. I'm not saying that was a good answer, but I am saying that was what I started hearing. I didn't hear from everybody. Some people were still on board, non-bartenders especially. So my confidence in my solo startup idea was wavering a little bit. And then I went to a food truck event. Edgewood Eats in Palo Alto. I can't remember. I think it was sometime in, was it in 2012? Somewhere. Maybe it was not. Maybe it was before that. Maybe it was 2010. I can't remember. It was a long time. I can actually look this up, see when this was. Anyway, went to a food truck event, and when you think about it, individual food trucks are as difficult to find as your favorite bartender sometimes if they don't have a regular shift, right? And that is exactly what happens. The two big questions people would ask mobile vendors, food trucks, are you going to be here again tomorrow or next week? Some period. What is your recurrence? And then where else can I find you? Those are the two. And so there was really no, at the time it was Twitter. Oh, just find us on Twitter. And then eventually Twitter and Facebook. And then later Instagram, right? Today, Instagram is the thing. So these tools are not helpful. So way back when I said, I've been working on this thing for regulars of service industry. And I had the Nookie map. What if I had a thing for food trucks, to find food trucks? And at the time, Roaming Hunger and Food Trucks Inn were coming into being. And they would just scrape Twitter feeds. So whether you were signed up with them or not, you were showing up on their maps. And I always thought that was a problem. So I said, what if I built this thing for food truck owners, and you would control it, you would pay a fee, and I said $10 a month. Would you pay $10 a month flat, no commissions, no hidden this or that? $10. At the time, the Twitter API was much more accessible. At the time, Google Maps supported KML files. You could point to a KML URL and it would open it into Google Maps. You could use Bbox and move as the person changed the view. You would get a Bbox and you could update the feed of place marks, right? I wish Google Maps didn't undo that. They moved it to Google Earth. I guess you can still view My Maps or something, but it was super, super cool to be able to tell people you don't even have to install anything. You can find your favorite food trucks on Google Maps, and you could do it in the website, I believe, right? You'd search for you'd search for a KML file URL and piece of cake. And so this is when jQuery Mobile was just coming on the scene, I think, or maybe before. So I remember messing around with all kinds of mobile-ish content because my goal was to make this a web platform, not have to install anything. So I was pushing the limits of usability, and it wasn't always usable. But my the regular DB platform was working for if you had a Metro PCS or some of these other sort of not necessarily BlackBerry or iPhone phones, but they still had a very basic web browser and it would basically work. So I got had to degrade a pleasantly degrading experience. So that's where my mobile vendor platform got its start. And then every time I would go out and talk to mobile vendors and figure out what they were doing and what was lacking, I would always get some more inputs. And so the beginning of the engineering dilemma, one of them is analysis paralysis, but the other one is to continuously add features and never release anything. So that's where that kind of got started on this project, because it kept getting cooler and cooler, but I had no real release scheme. I didn't really. I could have pointed all of the people I was talking to at it, but I never felt it was really ready, packaged up, ready to go, and I kept fiddling with it. And that was so we ended up forming an owners association, which was another distraction, but I figured that would be the perfect test bed, right? Have a whole bunch of people coordinated, because my scheme was aimed at events. So today, even I just looked at Off the Grid in San Francisco Bay Area, and they've now spread their seed to other places, but they're based in San Francisco. And Matt Cohen has done some good work, but he's also been somewhat predatory, if I may say, as far as my way or the highway kind of stuff. When we formed the Owners Association, there were owners who were afraid, didn't even want to be associated with the effort. Don't even say my name, because they didn't want to make Matt mad at them and cost them business. So I don't know if that's healthy, but it's the way of the world. So we, sorry, if you can hear that noise, I'm fiddling with things on my desk. So the idea was a nonprofit owners association, 501c6. We worked with the Southern California Mobile Vendors Association. Matt Geller had founded that, and we were up and running. We had the Bay Area Mobile Food Vendors Association, and my idea was to back that with some software. And then I had my house fire, April 12th. So yeah, the Nookie Map must have been, when was Nookie Map? Nookie Map was when I had just left Jawbone. No, yes, Jawbone. And then, I left Palm. Man, I gotta think about these dates. But just to give you some idea of how long some of this stuff has been in my rattling around in my head. So I say so a lot. My apologies. The owners association sort of fell apart onto itself. There was too much bickering. There was and the upside to having someone who doesn't own a food truck is my interest was in elevating the entire marketplace and determining whether my software solution would actually work. And it wasn't even anyone who would argue, oh, you're just trying to take something at $10. That's my, there is no, if you do better, you do better. I still get $10. So I really want volume. So I want you to do better. So you tell your friends. So there really wasn't there wasn't a basis for any sort of gouging arguments or that I'm trying to control. Yeah, no, I'm just trying to offer tools that work for you. Anyway, so that continues today. It's probably the main reason that I've never really did the final push. Although I'm still curious because Matt, who I mentioned, eventually founded the National Food Truck Association, which is only for food trucks, mobile kitchens. You cannot be a tent vendor. You cannot have a booth at a farmer's market and be a member of any of his organizations. He's very specific about that. And so he founded a Lot Mom, which was for managing venues. And then he went on to, I think that got renamed to Best Food Trucks. And then here in Las Vegas, there's a very awful person who has an awful application called Where's the Food Truck? And there's still Roaming Hunger. There's still food trucks in. There are lots of other attempts at applications. They always end up being the same thing. And this is my roundabout way of getting to stories and other cool technologies. And none of these, well, all these applications that I've just mentioned tend to lean heavily towards bringing customers to these platforms and getting between customer and vendor so that they can cater, so that they can collect some sort of commission. So it's a business development tool for the owner of the tool involved. And the big thing now is booking. We can book you food trucks for lunch at work, which is fine. Now, those used to be the safe haven for a small business owner. If you were a food truck owner, especially, if I can book a lunch in a business park or something, or 2 or 3 food trucks on a block in the center of some office buildings, usually that would be a commission-free. Maybe you have to get a permit or something, but you're not paying 10% plus $25 to Off the Grid or whomever, right? You're not paying for the opportunity. You are being paid. You're able to set up your business and operate it like a normal business person. That's why you get into business. So, I mean, if you're listening to this and you're a software engineer or you are anything, whatever you do, if you had to pay for the privilege of doing it, there are permit fees, and there are those sorts of fees are not unreasonable, right? There's a reason for those, But then when you look at like a business broker sneaking in and saying, "Oh, by the way, you have to pay me some of your a percentage based on your profits," right? Most fees are not taxes, but fees. Like, just occurred to me that I have to pay my business renewal fee by tomorrow. So that's a cost of doing business. But nobody is saying, "Oh, every time you have a software project, you have to pay us 10%." That's sort of well, we have a name for that in New Jersey, where I come from. And so yeah, that was the premise, was to free the small business person, take back the streets, which is ironically what Off the Grid says. But the businesses, if there were no mobile vendors, there'd be no Off the Grid. And so hey, if you're gonna build your business on our backs, why do we have to pay for the privilege, right? So that was my my insurrectionist, not to be confused with insurrection political. This was purely small business. Anyway, so the whole platform it was and is aimed at small businesses, and I think my business model is completely fair, and so I kind of want to see it through. Pardon me. So I may still, I don't know if I'll do it in Nevada, but yeah, so features like sharing of pages, the share button is the big thing now. And you see, well, Instagram has become the way that mobile vendors advertise their, whether it's a food truck or a farmer's market vendor or anything similar like that. They're using a tool which is absolutely horrible for this, right? The post can be reordered. The time that someone sees it may not make any sense. Honestly, they should be using, if they're going to use a social media tool that's not purpose-built, they should be using Facebook events. And multiple vendors can, and I've seen people experiment with this, but the maintenance is problematic. Maintaining events on Facebook is just a pain unless you use some extra software, which I'm sure costs money. So a lot of things are missing. Just the way people view. If you're looking for a food truck, or if you're a food truck fan and you're going to go to an event, I've seen it happen. Hey, according to the thing on Facebook, my favorite food truck was supposed to be there and they're not. Like, oh, well, they canceled. Or, whatever happened, the synchronization between reality and expectation can lead to just unhappiness, right? Like, oh, I came all the way over here. If you can get a customer to actually travel to your event, that is something. And so providing correct information seems like kind of the bare minimum. And that's me as a food truck fan, right? Like, yeah, okay, I really came here for Blast Off truck, but their truck broke down, or their whatever, they had an issue, so they couldn't show up. Oh, well, all right, I'm here. And that is what the event host and surely the other vendors they're okay with that, because you're here. But your customer, yeah, I'm here, but I'm not as happy, right? Wouldn't you rather have happy customers? And this applies to anything. This applies to airlines. It applies to your web app that you're developing. It applies to your restaurant. Anything. Like tricking people or being the second choice is, yeah, okay, I guess that's something. But if you're looking at a long-term success, it'd be nicer to have the customer arrive happy, and then, ooh, Blast Off truck is here, and look at all these others. Hey, farmer's market, I'm gonna get some artisanal bread, but look, there's also a booth selling olives, and another one that's selling pick a bookmarks. Whatever. There's all kinds of opportunity once a happy customer arrives. There's plenty to see at these places. So that's supposed to be the upside. Anyway, that was the plan for ever. And I've had various adventures between. I had a house fire. I worked for Intel. I had a horrible person that I had to deal with. I traveled around the world. The horrible person was not at Intel, but then I worked at Intel, traveled the world, makers, hackathons, layoff, various issues here in the Nevada community of mostly Vegas area. A very, very not Silicon Valley, definitely not. Presently solo entrepreneurial. We'll see what happens. So there's that word again. So the mobile vending story, that's in a nutshell. But there really will be, there's a whole, and basically it's a technology test bed, right? So today, if you're looking for a mobile vendor, a food truck, everybody has a Google map with icons, markers, and they, some of them, I think Off the Grid tries to do events. So the notion with events, I mentioned this earlier, that the IMDb tie-in persists. If you visit Internet Movie Database, you will find, say you search for Star Wars, and you're going to see a list of cast and crew. You know, the main actors, get a picture and all that, but you can click on the full cast and crew, and you'll see, you know, Mark Hamill and Harrison Ford and the rest, Carrie Fisher, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. If you click on Harrison Ford, you will see a list of his movies, and you'll see a whole list of his movies: Blade Runner, Indiana Jones, all those. You click on one of those, you'll see all the cast and crew. So the notion was, and so I kind of alluded to this just a moment ago as well. Once someone is looking for their favorite food truck, if I were to go to my platform and click on Blast Off Truck, unfortunately it would say that they are either permanently or temporarily closed. They haven't really been running for years. But Sarah and Prashant, maybe they relaunch Blast Off. That would be appropriate. And their food was amazing, by the way. They have a page. They have a profile. You go to Blast Off, you see their schedule. They're going to be at Movable Feast. And maybe they wouldn't be, but let's say for a moment they are Movable Feast on next Friday. So I click on Movable Feast for next Friday. Oh, I see all the vendors that are going to be there. You see where I'm going with that, right? So a customer who's looking for Blast Off Truck may see these other vendors that they've never heard of, they've never seen. And same for farmers markets, right? I might be going for that artisanal bread, but look, there's going to be a bunch of other interesting stuff there. So I'm going to go for the bread. I'm going to stay for the other vendors. Now, if I am told ahead of time, Blast Off Truck or my artisanal bread booth will not be at the event, but I am not there finding it out, I am notified ahead of time, I have already seen the other possibilities. I may just say, hey, look, Blast Off's not going to be there, nor is my artisanal bread booth. But there are so many other interesting, maybe I'll just go and check it out. That, to me, is a more fair way to do that, and almost certainly would have a better result. I know, speaking for myself, yes, I'd be actually a little bit impressed, but I'm biased. So that is what I am working on. When I'm not working on the other 10 other things I'm working on. We had a nice meeting when I was in Phoenix to get to get Casa Nunzia up and running. There will probably be a whole new podcast show about the Casa Nunzia efforts. I'm sure there will be some Zoom discussions. Maybe we'll do video. And the idea there, briefly, is to co-create, to involve users of assistive technologies. It doesn't have to be technologies, but people don't often think of assistive products. Well, the normal discussion around these, the casual, the person who doesn't use these things doesn't think beyond. The people that do need these things, of course they do, obviously. A ramp, a grab bar, these are assistive devices. They're just not high tech. so they work. But there are often cases where, by not speaking to the people who will be using these things out of necessity, not convenience, like your smart speaker. I always use this example. Your smart speaker is gee whiz cool until you need to use it for something really important, like part of getting your day started, like turn on the bathtub or shower, do some, take some actions that are part of my life, not give me a flash update or tell me what time it is or where's my stuff if you're an Amazon fan. So the ability to ask people to participate in design and development of these things, that exists already. But there's no that I'm aware of. There's no concerted effort. So taking everything I've learned in my travels, makers, hackers, big companies, co-creation, put that to use in a nonprofit foundation, public charity. Casa Nunzia. Casa Nunzia was inspired by Casa Jasmina, which was a project going on with at least one Arduino person back when I worked at Intel. So an homage to them. I don't know if Casa Jasmina is still in operation, but it was a hackable apartment. So in this case, imagine your home becomes a test bed and you are part of the development process and you try out these things in your living space. So that will come up a lot more down the road. But these are the sorts of things I'm working on. Nookie Map, I think I still want to do in this new age of people having been stuck home all the time. And you can see, Match.com, eHarmony, the fish thing, and Tinder, all these horrible, awful applications that you want to meet people first. So this is sort of the opposite of my mobile vendor scheme. And by the way, my mobile vendor scheme does address all mobile vendors, not just food trucks, because the people are still small businesses, whether they have wheels or not. So yeah, this is the opposite, where you, rather than trying to pick through a crowd based on a fake picture, you answer those simple questions, like I said, and you go somewhere and anonymously, right? Just go. You don't have to announce that you're going as a person, right? You anonymously say, check mark, I'm going to go, or I am there, I guess. There's a privacy issue, of course, but the way that you attract other people is to make your presence known in some way. So rather than saying Dan is going to be at Fibbers, you just show a little blue dot, I guess, or whatever color I want at Fibbers. And so if there's 50 dots at Fibbers of various colors and flavors, I guess, then someone might look and say, oh, okay, that's where a bunch of available people are. I'll head over there. That's all. That's all you need to know. So it's where the hotspots are, right? And it could be the library. I mean, the place where the books used to be. There are places now called the library that are bars, and that's fine too. But anyway, a whole bunch of ideas and never enough time to work on them, but I am working on them, I promise. So stories, I think, will figure into the mobile vending stuff, because much like they use Instagram now, you can provide some control over what people are seeing, and you're enabling a visually interesting presentation of times, dates, food pictures, product pictures, if you're not a food truck, in a format people are familiar with. So we'll see. But end of that discussion would be that I was looking at Reveal, which is a JavaScript slide deck presentation platform that has come a long way since I first used it. And that's why, I mean, if you look at its feature set, it's like, yeah, you could do stories with this and other cool things. So stories are all very similar. So it looks like Reveal would be super capable. So I'm pondering that. Anyway, that's what I'm working on. Now it is story time. 45 minutes in. I can talk about food trucks and the food truck business and marketplace analytics and regulation and legislation issues and all that for many, many hours. I was thinking about starting a podcast for that, except that mobile vendors don't have time for such things. So, and you wouldn't want to know all these details. So the software development side is probably enough. So story time. How did I already told you one story about food trucks. So this is, I guess, extra. But I've thought about this recently, especially in the context of Casa Ninja. So I started with computers. My grandparents got a Atari Pong machine, I guess. Hooked it up to the TV. I was, I think I was like 6 years old. I was at their house in Fairlawn, New Jersey. And Pong on TV. Crazy. When I was 10 and we were visiting for the summer, we got another Atari product, a 2600. And it was right around when Indiana Jones was coming out, because I saw the advertisement on TV and they show a guy jumping on a biplane taking off from the water with the pontoons. And I remember having zero interest. I thought, what is that? That looks dumb. I'm going to sneeze, so bear with me. Just not right now. I have tissue ready. So there's that word again. So 10 years old or so, 9 or 10, Atari 2600. We eventually got one at where I lived, my home, my parents' home. So 2600, neat. 10 years old is about 4th grade. We had a restaurant. Good times. Junior high, I was becoming very interested in computers. I would seek out people that had computers. I used to hang out with these high school kids who were hackers. We used to go to this BBS that was in Phoenix, and the guys there had it was like a junkyard of electronics, and they had a Digitalker, and they had some HP mini mainframe thing, and they had I don't know if you remember, HP had a touchscreen. It was a green CRT, and they had LEDs around the edge of it, so it could figure out. So it was not really a touchscreen so much as you just had to break the beams, and you could move a square cursor around the screen. It was kind of neat. It made the cover of Byte magazine. You know, that's how things begin. In rough, not completely fleshed out, non-ideal implementations. We used to go there. They had a Van de Graaff generator thing, so sparks would jump through it, and you're like, "Whoa, stay back!" So it was kind of a it was like a man cave, I guess, except it was tech wiring all that everywhere. And then when someone logged into the BBS, it would announce them. So it would say like, if I was signing in, D. Hugo has signed in. This is Digitalker. Right. So all day, if we were hanging out there, or we'd go out to eat, and we'd just talk about nerdy stuff. So the first version of Meetup, I guess. So I didn't have a computer of my own. So aside from that 2600, arguably a computer, but I remember there was a keyboard attachment for the 2600. Did you ever see that? It would plug into the cartridge receptacle. So you could plug in this keyboard that would plug into as a cartridge, but then it would be on top of the console. May even have had some clips to keep it on the top. So the top air, the grill. So it used to stick right there, and you could type on your 2600. So how awesome would that have been? I don't know how you would save stuff or do anything, but anyway, so the 2600 was a game changer, literally. I think everybody has had experiences with that. So to me, the next thing was going to be some sort of an Apple product. I was a big fan of Apple Computer. The IBM PC had come out. The Apple II Plus was kind of the big thing. in this time frame. So I remember going to computer stores all the time. The Commodore 64, I'm sorry, the VIC-20, I think at the time. You could go to computer stop. See where we've arrived. So the VIC-20, I think, was a big thing. You could go into the mall and there would be computers. Stop.
Okay. Is there any other
Stop.
information I can provide?
Stop. Computer stop.
Thanks for using Hurricane Center.
Mute. I always forget to do that. You could go into a mall and you'd see hello or some random text scrolling on screens because everybody in the universe knew 2 lines of BASIC. One of them was go to 10. So everybody was doing that. So I eventually, I think it was when I graduated from junior high, graduating quotes, I got my Apple IIe, entered high school. Eventually, I think my sophomore year, I got a job at McDonald's, saved up for a modem, got my modem, my Matsuba 1200 baud modem. It's been 2400 bauds were coming out, so the price dropped, and I was making $3 and $3.15 an hour. So not so easy to save up for the big dollar Hayes 2400s. And that's where my computing began. Now, somewhere during junior high, this was the Casa Nunzia tie-in. Somewhere, I think it was in 8th grade, but at this point, I used to be a Cub Scout, and one of the fellow scouts, his mom, Molly, had a friend named Cindy, and Cindy was vision impaired. Not completely blind, but definitely vision impaired. So in order for her to read a computer screen, she had to be right up against, she had to put her face against the screen. So some very limited vision. And she said, hey, would you like to help Cindy learn computers at the local community college? So yeah, sure, of course. Any opportunities to get my hands on a keyboard, I was in. So I learned Pascal on a VAX, helping Cindy, or helping, whatever, doing the typing. But of course, I learned all along the way, and I was using this VAX, which would later come in handy at Harvey Mudd College because we had HMC VAX. That was before I jumped into the CS departments. What was it? Ultrix. It was a multiple 386s in a weird failover Unix architecture. It's kind of cool. Anyway, so VAX, Pascal, vision impaired, learned a whole bunch of stuff about computing and working with people with impairments. Not that made too much of a difference initially. I wasn't, I didn't see, no pun intended, how all this would fit together until a few years ago, after much more travels and much more interaction with people. But it's entirely possible that was a seed planted for the Casa Nunzia project. But either way, my interest in computing probably got sparked by that Pong machine. Definitely, in junior high, we had an Apple II Plus in the library where I was a TA. So I would shelve books and then I could play with the computer anytime I wanted to. And I think we had an Acorn computer lab. Remember Acorns? Before ARM. And any opportunity, anywhere, anytime, if I could use computers, I was down. I learned, you know what? I forgot all about this. We had 3 Atari 800 computers when I was in 6th grade. I don't know how I forgot this. And I was the board kid. So there were 2 other, they were boys, for better or worse. I think they were in 8th grade. And I was the board kid. So my teacher, Debbie Reeker, was it in 6th grade? No, it was not in 6th grade. It was It was sometime before that. I don't remember when. I'll have to look up when an Atari 800 was out. Anyway, the teacher, Debbie Reeker, was like, "Hey, why don't you go learn about these computers? Then you can show the teachers how they work." So that was probably much more seminal than the library computer. But either way, I didn't have my own computer, and so any opportunity I had before me to use computers, I took it, and eventually got my own computer, got my modem, learned about BBSs and special interest group. I used to go to the Atom 2, which was the Apple Desert Apple Menagerie. And then it had the 2, like the Apple 2. So total Apple fan group. And then eventually they became the Arizona Apple Users Group. And I used to hang out every weekend. I was totally in. And all this was before Meetup, before the mechanization of meetups. It was just organic special interest groups, and arguably a better way to go. But that was how I got my start in computers, and kind of interesting how it works with the Casa Ninja project. Some of those early interactions, not only with Cindy, but with other people with special needs in my travels, and hackathons, and a variety of other things. So along the way, all these things have added up, all these experiences. So whether it's applying what I've learned over the years to mobile vendors or to Nookie Maps or other things, it all does add up. And that is the point of this entire podcast, is to talk about those sorts of things, what I'm working on, where it came from, what you're working on. That's why I want to have guests. Maybe a live stream with some sort of chat. I really am not a fan of YouTube's business model. I'm not a fan of the way that they are treating their content creators. Not that I would be doing controversial things, but their rules do seem to change. I think I started off by talking about the Delta variant. If this was a YouTube channel, I would be demonetized or blocked or who knows what for saying the wrong words. That is their platform. They can do as they see fit, I suppose, but that means I can do it as I see fit. So I don't know about a video, but anyway, live stream, content, discussion, engagement. I'm always interested in what people are working on. And it's hard to find people in Las Vegas who are working on things that are interesting, that are not opening a new bar. And bars are fine, but it's hard to talk about your tech innovation in beer taps. So I'm looking forward to expanding this podcast into discussion with others working on interesting things. It doesn't even have to be technology. Are you making furniture? Everybody needs furniture. Stuff like that. So, or maybe you're cooking something cool, food, or maybe you have a new way of making coffee. That would always get my interest. Speaking of coffee, I have a profile page on Buy Me a Coffee. You are not obligated to use the money functions, but I've been using that as a central hub of links. I've added a few named projects. There's already links to the FFS Talk podcast, the Hugo Floss podcast. Each of those has a show notes newsletter from Substack and a weekend edition of a newsletter on review. And I will have another discussion another time about my thoughts on these free. They're not MailChimp, Constant Contact. These long established commercial email platforms. Substack more review. They got bought out by Twitter, so not quite as much, but they have more of a startup feel to them. That does not mean that they are better. I would really like. I should check on MailChimp. I would really like a way to publish that doesn't involve hand editing documents, so like an API. And I know AWS has a simple simple mail service, simple message service, I think it is, SMS, not appropriately named. Simple notification service, simple message service, I think it is. So you can create your own newsletter in the cloud using their tools, and it will send out bulk emails and all that. That's the number one thing with these services. You can't use your personal Gmail account to email, well, in my case, millions and millions of subscribers, because that will cause problems and you will violate some TOS. So you use a commercial mailing service, and you can create your own newsletters, and you can make use of rich email limitations. That sounds like a weird word. I use MailJet's API. So a MailJet is a similar service, and you can construct emails with their tag system, sort of like AMP, but it translates it to the legal subset of email supported across various email clients. So totally cool. So if I can construct my rich email and then automatically send it, you can't really do that easily with Substack and Review, the two platforms I've been using. So sort of toying with migrating to a self-hosted platform, just like everything else. I think if you can, you should make your own stuff. That's how the internet got going. So there you go. Hey, we're at 1 hour already. So buymeacoffee.com/Dan Hugo. You can see the list of things. The project links they're not links yet. I'll start filling in links as they start rolling out, but I at least have a list of things to look at. And if you do happen to want to throw some money in the caffeine bucket, two people so far have, I'm not laughing at them, I'm just saying for my millions and millions of subscribers, you'd think, anyway, 2 people, Gail and Kevin, thank you again. Those monies are going towards some Lavazza espresso roast beans and some Death Wish medium roast. Death Wish, I've had more than my share of Death Wish dark roast. Death Wish is twice the caffeine, sort of the jolt of coffee, which is weird. It should go the other way, I think. But it's basically Arabica and Robusta beans in a flavorful combination, and Robusta beans are higher in caffeine, so you get a drinkable dark roast. I mean, it is a dark roast. There's no question. I've used it in my mocha pot, and it works fine. You get a nice dark coffee out of that thing with the Death Wish beans. So they're very good. I've enjoyed dark roast Death Wish for a long time. I used to get it directly from them. I have stickers. I have more stickers than I should. Death Wish. So the medium roast looks interesting. So medium roast and then some more Lavazza espresso. I had the Grand Crema, and that was quite good. So we'll see what else looks good. So if you are interested in contributing to the caffeine supply, that's what's fueling these endeavors for the time being. But no obligation. The profile page is there. I figured I would keep that profile outside of a personal blog or business website. I'm not going to advertise for myself on the Nookie Map, for example. So I can't really say, oh, well, Nookie Map, you can go there and then go to the coffee page. So this keeps all of this stuff out of band mention / support, I guess. I don't know. I don't really want to make money from doing this, because really, but so I would like to talk about what I'm working on, what you're working on, but I want to actually make money from my projects. That would prove to me that they work, and that is a big chunk of why I want to pursue these various ideas, is to see if they work. And I literally just did the FFS Talk podcast yesterday. Guest was me. If you want to join in any of these shows, feel free. Episodes aplenty. So Theories of the Good Life, you can listen to that show there. FFS Talk. if you go to Buy Me a Coffee, the profile page has links to everything. So I won't bore you with that here. So technically it's www.buymeacoffee.com/Dan Hugo, DANHUGO. And you can see all the links. Thank you for listening. Thank you for sharing with others. I would love to have a live chat / drop-in audio / whatever. I want to hear what you're working on. You can send an email to join, as in join an episode, join at quagglingsand.com, QUOGGLINGSAND, quaggling. Of course, quaggling. It's a word I invented when I was 4 years old. I've told that story. Quagglingsand.com. Join at quagglingsand.com. It will be in the show notes, the brief show notes in your podcast software. There is the podcast newsletter from Substack, quagglingsand.substack.com. That will also be linked in the show notes. So everything is sort of cross-linked. If you didn't get that impression already, the Internet Movie Database cross-linking scheme to me is a good thing, and it should be easy to find one thing when you found the other related thing. I think that's how the internet started. The web. That's how the web started. The internet started from DARPA, but that's another story entirely from another time. Thank you for listening. At 1 hour and 6 minutes, you are very, very kind. Until next week. Bye.